Hi, everyone, and welcome to Zero to Empire. I have Nathan Westfall in this podcast episode today, and he is the founder of Vine Valley Analytics and Strategy. So, what actually inspired you to start that business, and how does it actually sit at the crossroads of wine and technology, Nathan?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate being here. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Inspiration for starting the business, I was working in the industry, kind of adjacent and providing content, mostly doing content creation, photography, videography, and talking to my contacts in the industry, seeing their backend system and seeing just the wealth of data that they have. And it's an ocean of data, asking folks like, do you use this? Do you utilize any of this data? And more often than not, the answer was, no, not really. We don't really know what to do with it. So I saw there was a definite opportunity there. You know what? This is time to strike because this is something that I'm interested in and something that I would want to do just on my own. I might as well just lean in and start a business and see what happens.
That's awesome. And what exactly is the business?
So the business itself is kind of twofold. So I'd have consultation type services where I provide data analytics, data science services for specifically wineries or companies working within the wine industry. And the second fold of the business is software. I do small SaaS projects, a couple like individual SaaS projects that I've released, mostly through the common point of sale system that the entire wine industry uses called Commerce 7. So release like little pieces of software there that help people sell wine, ship wine, and do everything within that process a little bit more efficiently and with a little bit more flair and fun.
That's great. And we were talking before that you actually had some military background as an air traffic controller. So, how'd that actually influence your approach to business and analytics?
Kind of a difficult or interesting area to come from coming into wine and analytics. The two never seem to match. I always get that from folks. Realistically, when I look down at it from the 30,000 foot view, there's a moment that really just stands out to me in my controlling career that adapted really, really well. I was sitting one of the busiest airspaces on the planet at the moment. And there were really defined ways people were doing things. There were routes that went north and south. There were routes that went east and west. And all the planes kind of stayed on that same route. All the controllers used those routes. I found that my mind doesn't work that way. Like I see the established and I try to do something different. I love to innovate. So I would, make my own little side routes or do things that were, still within the bounds of safety, but also that kind of challenged the established route and got people to where they were going a little bit faster, a little bit safer, a little bit better. Bringing that into the analytics side, again, just seeing the wealth of data, wealth of knowledge that's out there that people aren't using. It's like, okay, how do we take this traditional route of what we're doing with data and really kind of turn it on its head and provide something that's innovative, interesting, and different to the industry that's going to lift the industry as a whole?
That's great. So, when it comes to the challenges you faced building this business and introducing new technology and the data analytics part of it, how do you actually go about such a traditional industry like wine?
It's not easy, let me tell you. Wine is highly traditional. They've been around for millennia at this point, and the business of selling wine hasn't really changed in the last several decades. People still tend to buy wine the same way as they did in the past, although now they have, some newer innovations like wine clubs and subscription models, things that are, helping people make that process a little bit easier. So trying to come in with new ideas, innovation, technology that really challenges the status quo and challenges the norm hasn't been easy, but it's been an effort and like a labor of love in the end, because you have to be able to get in there and show efficacy to folks. And once you can show them that like, hey, this works, this isn't just something that you should be implementing, it's something that actually physically works. Look, we have returns, we have higher revenue, we have everything that you would need to keep this business sustainable for the long term in the face of highly volatile and changing environment.
100%. And that's great to hear. So, how do you actually go about building trust and credibility in such a relationship driven industry as it's so traditional?
It takes a lot. It takes a lot of effort. Most of that effort comes from just one-on-one conversations with folks, as well as speaking at some of the larger conferences and things that are put on by the industry itself. we find to get a lot of really positive feedback from the conferences that I've spoken at. And it gets my name out there, and it puts me in front of a group that I wouldn't naturally or normally speak to, kind of like the elite of the industry. So being able to sit in those spaces and provide data, information, knowledge, teach people how to do new things has been a real big boost. Also, just as another plug there, I write a blog, an industry-related blog, and that has gotten some really good reception across the industry, not only within the United States, but around the world.
That's pretty cool that your blog is hitting all around the world, as obviously people from all around the world do enjoy wine. So that's awesome. I do myself, good little red wine and glass, so you're good to go. And so what's some surprising insight you've uncovered from using wine data that had a big impact?
Using the data to map out some insights, there are a couple things so far that we found just in working with our wineries that have really been game changers on an individual level for wineries, and then more largely on an institutional level for the wine industry itself. On more of the individual winery level, it's taking a look at their business, taking a look at how they're selling, what they're selling, who they're selling to, and trying to narrow that down a little bit so they're really hyper focused on selling exactly the right wine to the right person. And on a more institutional level, the real big eye-opening thing that we found has been watching the trend in wine clubs. Wine clubs have been the same for quite some time, and it's essentially just a subscription model. People come in, they sign up for the wine club, they get X number of shipments per year, and they take those shipments for a certain amount of time, and then they churn. We have a pretty decent amount of churn. They churn at anywhere from 6 months to 2 to 3 years for a typical wine club member. We're seeing this pattern of churn over and over and over again, and nobody could quite figure out why. Diving deep into the data and diving deep into survey responses and writing some surveys and getting people to respond back, we found out a lot of that was price-based. A lot of it was based on supply. We had a way oversupply, especially with COVID-19, where people ordered a ton of wine to be sent to their homes. They had a dearth of supply. They had a price differential that didn't work for them. And being able to identify those two things to start up a solution at one winery that then exploded into a bunch of other wineries that have also worked up having a bailout club has been transformational for quite a few wineries in the industry. So we provided them with a club that had a lower ask. So it had a lower ask threshold of shipments per year, instead of maybe doing 3 or 4 shipments, doing 1 or 2. And it had a lower price point. So it focused it on entry-level wines, things that people could afford, and things that people could afford in mass. And being able to develop something that worked in that way and really hit that need, check that box, filled that need, has been transformational. Like I said, with a lot of different wineries, they've seen lots of wine club members that went from that quick turn 6 months to a year, extending out to 2 years to 3 years. And they have more long-term customers now because they're able to build that funnel of, okay, they start at the bailout club level, and they can work their way up, and they can always again drop back down to a lower level, so they don't have to constantly be taking a ton of wine or have to choose between, do I take wine or do I get out of the club?
Such a great idea to make the memberships for these wineries. Definitely a good way to make have a strong membership throughout the entire winery experience and for the business itself. So we were talking about before the podcast that you have a story behind the rainy day offer and how it actually transformed your sales strategy for it all. How'd you go about all that, and how did it come from about?
One of my favorite stories, one of my favorite examples of the efficacy of data analysis and data science. We had a winery that was really struggling to sell in the winter months. It's pretty standard for wineries to struggle to sell in the winter months, specifically January, February, and March. They're the months when the weather is the least positive. People don't come up to wine country when it's raining. They don't want to go sit outside on a beautiful patio if it's raining and cold and whatnot. And indoor spaces aren't really, outdoor spaces trump indoor spaces more often than not. So we don't see as much throughput going on. We see people that are starting their dry January or changing their consumptive habits at the beginning of the year. So we're trying to find ways to connect with folks that were not traditional, not on the oh hey, we released another Pinot this year, or take a look at our new lineup for Chardonnays. And okay, we're going to reach out to them on a really individual level. We took a look at people that did visit in winters past and pulled the data on all those days that they visited to see if any of those days were rainy. And then you found on the other side where they lived, found rainy days. And then when they had a rainy day in their hometown, say I'm from Omaha, Nebraska, and it's raining in September, or it's raining in maybe a March where things are starting to warm up, send them an email. Hey, it looks a bit outside where you are right now, like it did when you visited our winery. Do you want to relive that experience by maybe purchasing a bottle and maybe turning a rainy day into a sunny day on your own? Worked like gangbusters. It's amazing. People felt connected. They felt connected to the brand, and they felt seen as, they had come maybe years ago, but the brand remembered that they were there. Not only did they remember, but they remembered the weather when they visited, which was obviously a factor that everybody remembers.
Honestly, with that email, I would go buy some wine from that winery. It's a solid email script right there. And that's great you came up with that. So, what kind of advice would you give to other small business owners trying to find success in such a niche industry and traditional as well?
Persistence is key more than anything. It's a persistence game. It's shaking hands. It's meeting people. It's speaking at events. Put yourself in uncomfortable situations where you don't feel maybe you're the best person for the job or the most informed or the smartest person in the room, but put yourself in those situations where you're out there and you're able to share your opinion, share your knowledge, share what you have. And you'd be surprised how word of mouth spreads like wildfire, especially around a smaller niche industry like the wine industry. I said, I have people around the world that read my blog now, and I had no clue. I know wine's consumed globally and it's grown, grapes are grown globally, but I had no clue I had this sort of reach. And as soon as I started putting myself out there, doing something that made me feel uncomfortable by publishing a blog and speaking at conferences, it was amazing the return that I got just in social capital as well as, actual clients.
That's great to hear. And your blog is very awesome to read, very informative, and anybody should check it out, honestly. And so, where do you actually see your business in the next 5 years when it comes to the analytics and everything?
I see a lot of growth potential in my business for the next 5 years, mainly because now that data and data science is being talked about more broadly in the wine industry itself, adoption is becoming a lot more of a focus of winery leadership than it was in the past. I'm perfectly positioned to capture that growth, capture that need. Again, seeing again that there's an ocean of data out there that nobody's utilizing. I'm the one. I'm utilizing that. I can easily take what you already have and spin it into gold and create revenue for you over and over and over again using just your own data. So I see myself, on a pretty decent growth trajectory over the next 5 years.
That's awesome to hear. And when it comes to some of the challenges you have faced thus so far, like how'd you overcome them in such a traditional space as well? Because wine is honestly a very hard niche to get into. It takes a lot of capital and everything.
It's again just persistence. It's a lot of persistence in there. It's a lot of sweat equity, a lot of putting myself in those situations that are uncomfortable. I think that's really the key to everything, is that just level of persistence, nose to the grindstone, even if it means, I'm working one job and then doing analytics and individual things at nighttime, trying to make things work. That level of persistence, just knowing that you will succeed, like you have the answer to everyone's questions, and that self-belief, that got me through in the end. And when things finally started to pick up, when people finally started to be interested, and it was like, good thing I did all that work in the beginning, being persistent to build myself up as an authority, because now people actually are relying on what I have to say and interested in reading the book.
Yeah, you've definitely become an influential person in the space, and that's great to hear. Well, I do appreciate you being on the podcast, Nathan. I appreciate your insight as well. And where can everyone find you if they want to connect with you, if they want to do business with you, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it 100%. You can find me. The website is vinevalleymanagement.com. That's the website for the business. Contact card in the contact page. Feel free to drop any questions, comments, concerns, any if you're looking for even non-wine related business. We do analytics and strategy for any industry. You can also find me on LinkedIn. You should be under Nathan Westfall. You'll see me. Picture looks the same. And I publish my newsletter through LinkedIn as well as on Medium and a couple other winery or wine specific platforms.
That's great to hear. Everyone that loves wine or wants to do wine or do business with analytics, make sure to check out Nathan. And thank you everyone for watching. And I'll see you guys in the next episode of Zero to Empire.